for this wicked world. Your data's uncorrupted, but does something skip inside you? That's what takes up time.
Hi there, welcome back to My Hot Kitchen. I'm Wendy, and I'm showing you an easy romantic meal that you can cook for your sweetie that I guarantee you will turn up the heat in your kitchen. And this is a good spicy one. I'm making roasted red chicken, saffron rice, mango chutney, and one of my personal favorites, naan bread. So naan bread is something that you're probably going to want to get started about 2, maybe 3 hours before you intend to serve your sweetie this delicious dinner. So I'm adding 1.5 teaspoons of instant yeast, 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm using beaters for my mixer here, and 1/2 cup of warm water. You want it to be just barely warm to the touch when you stick your fingers in there. And then mix it together. And you'll probably need to use a spatula to get in there and break up any lumps of yeast that have formed. Sometimes the yeast likes to stick to the side of the bowl. And it doesn't really seem to matter what type of mixer you're using, it's gonna stick. So give it a good mix, breaking up the lumps as you need to, until you see that all the yeast has dissolved into the warm water. There we go. So naan bread's not that different than any other type of bread. The next step is to add the sugar and blend it together. So if you don't happen to have a mixer in your house, it's no problem. You can still make naan bread. You just follow these same steps and use either a spoon or a whisk to mix the wet ingredients together, or electric beaters. And then you just fold the rest of the ingredients in by hand. It's substantially more time consuming, but it is absolutely possible. Now with the sugar dissolved, it's time to add 3/4 of an ounce of milk and 1 egg. Blend that in as well. And now the last step is to add the flour. I have about 2¼ cups of flour here. I'm going to add most of it at once. I'm going to leave a little bit off to the side. Each batch of bread varies a little bit based on humidity and other factors that you have no control over, so it's good to have a little extra flour on hand. All right. Now with that all mixing in together, I'm going to go ahead and change over to my bread hook attachment. Save whatever I can off these beaters here. See, if I keep working with these beaters, I am guaranteed to ruin them. That's no fun. They'll just curl up and die. Need something more substantial like a hook in order to mix a stiff dough like this. And then just allow the bread to knead for anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes, or until you see that it's reached a nice, smooth, soft, stretchy texture. Alrighty, in several minutes here, give this a little look-see, see how we're doing. Nice. Really no more stickiness left, and it stretches quite a bit before that dough breaks off. So I'm going to say that we're good to move on to the next step here. Clear off a little space for myself. And then I'm ready to show you the next step, which is a little hand kneading. And just in case you are doing this by hand, well, this is how you hand knead. If you happen to be doing this by hand, you're going to be needing a whole lot of flour. And if you're just going to finish it by hand, a little bit will do the trick. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1 whole clove of garlic that I've smashed into a paste, about a teaspoon each of fennel and anise seeds and sesame seeds. And I'm going to knead these right into the dough. And it's really going to make it taste awesome. Begin by folding it in and then doing this until it's all mixed in together. And I will add more flour as needed to prevent it from sticking to the counter. Now, traditionally, naan bread is baked in a tandoor oven, which is a stone oven with a fire in the bottom of it. Now, most of us don't have tandoor ovens in our kitchen, so in this instance, I'm going to be using a flat griddle on top of my grill, which will help to simulate the heat that I'm going to need to make this bread taste right. And if you don't have a grill to work with, a nice hot pan fresh out of the oven will get you pretty darn close to the flavor as well. Alright, so when I stretch out the bread, I can see that all my little seeds and garlic have evenly distributed. So that means that I'm done kneading. Now what I have here is a bowl with plenty of olive oil in it. I'm just going to flip this guy around in here a whole bunch of times, make sure he's covered in oil, and then cover him with a nice wet cloth. Probably take about an hour. What you want to see is a doubling in volume, and then we'll move on to the next step. So I'm just going to set this off to the side. It's going to need, like I said, about an hour, maybe even an hour and a half to rise. So I'm going to go take a little break, and when I come back, we'll start roasting the chicken. All right, it is time to get the chicken going. So I have a nice little potent blend of spices here. I've got a tablespoon of paprika, a tablespoon of curry, a tablespoon of chili sauce, and about a teaspoon here of turmeric. What I'm going to do is just blend them all together and make a lovely little spice rub for the chicken. All these ingredients are going to combine together and make a beautiful red-toned spiced coating for the chicken. The chili and the curry are going to add a lot of heat to this, so if you don't care for the heat, I'd suggest substituting a substantial amount of the curry and the chili sauce with more paprika. But don't leave those ingredients out. They add so much flavor and character to the dish. And then once all the ingredients are incorporated, maybe add a few drops of water to bring it to a nice spreadable consistency. The goal here is to make it a mixture that can be spread all over the entire surface of the chicken, inside and out. You could also use chicken stock or cooking wine or cooking sherry or any other sort of liquid that suits your fancy for this purpose. I want to keep the flavors nice and clean, so that's why I'm using the water. That looks pretty good right there. Nice and mushy and spreadable. Get it all mixed in there. There we go. Now I'm going to bring the chicken over to me and get ready to spread this love all over it. Excellent. Inside and out. Slather it on there nice and thick. Making sure to get in all the crevices. Flipping it over to get the back side. Making sure those wings get a nice generous coating as well, so they're extra special yummy. And then into the inside, another little dollop here. Now don't fear a chicken, it's just a chicken. It's not gonna hurt you. Stick your fingers all the way in there and make sure that you rub the entire inner cavity thoroughly. Alrighty, now it's time to truss this bad boy. So a nice long piece of string here. Wrap it around the tail, or what's left of the poor little bird's tail. Cross it over. Bring those little legs together. Wrap it around. And then flip it over here and tuck those wings back behind like that. Draw that string up by the wings. Maybe wrap it around there once or twice just to make sure it's in there good and tight. And then, facing it away from you, tie the string around what's left of the neck bone. Nice and tight. And cut off the excess string, because you won't be needing that anymore. And then pop this gorgeous chicken in a baking pan. I see some spots on here that I want to get just a little bit more of. Excellent. And I'm going to wash my hands really quick here. And now I'm ready to put this little guy in the oven. So I'm going to start out with a really nice hot oven. I've got this preset to 400 degrees. And I'm going to let it cook at that temperature for 15 minutes. And then I'm going to reduce the temperature and baste it with a nice little dollop of butter. All right, and now it's time to get that delicious mango chutney going. So a chutney is basically a really thick, heavy, spiced, sweet fruit sauce. And what you're gonna do is just cook together a whole mango, a quarter cup of sugar, clove of garlic, a couple ounces of white wine vinegar, an ounce of cooking sherry or some other sort of dry white cooking wine. And what you want to do is bring this up to a boil, drop it down to a low simmer. The spices for this are going to be a bay leaf, 4 little things of allspice, and a cinnamon stick or 2. And finally, a generous amount of freshly grated ginger. You can substitute a half teaspoon of dried ginger for this as well. Add some salt. Give it a stir to make sure those ingredients are completely combined. And stick a lid on it. And then it's time for part 2 of the naan bread. Pulling this cloth off. Wow, that is amazing looking. I'm going to go ahead and punch that down, folding it in on itself here. Reduce it back down to size. And then all I'm going to do is just cut off little pieces here about the size of a golf ball. And roll them into little rounds. Then I'm going to set these rounds in a pan right here. And later when it's time to cook them, we'll flatten them out and throw them on a griddle. Now I'm going to cover these back up with a little my little damp white cloth here. And I do that so that they don't dry out. And now it's an excellent time to get your rice going as well. So the very first step to the rice is to go ahead and steep the saffron. Saffron is a very rare and special, somewhat spendy spice. Believe me, it's worth it. I only use it for special occasions, such as an easy romantic meal. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking a little pinch of the threads and I'm steeping it in nice hot water. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a couple tablespoons of luscious butter into a little saute pan here and get it melting. It's kind of a classic peel-off method here. Now traditionally in India they use a clarified butter called ghee. And you can go ahead and get some ghee if you like, if you want a more authentic taste. But I'll tell you, regular butter does the job just fine. Get that all melted. And then to that, add 3/4 cup of jasmine rice. Give that a couple minutes to soak up that gorgeous butter. In the meantime, your saffron is steeping away and all of its flavor is being extracted into the water that you're going to be cooking the rice in. Give this a couple minutes just to make sure that each grain of rice is thoroughly coated with the butter. And go ahead and add about 1/4 cup of sliced almonds. Whole almonds or slivered almonds will work as well. And I'm going to saute this until I see that the almonds have started to brown a little bit. So the brown color change is just barely starting to happen now, and it's subtle. You don't have to toast them all the way. You're just looking for them to take on the color of the butter more than anything. I'm gonna add 1 small diced up carrot to the mix now. I'm gonna fold that in. Gorgeous. And then in comes the saffron water. And a ½ teaspoon of salt. What I'm gonna do is, again, bring this up to a boil and drop it down to a simmer. I'm gonna give it a couple minutes of boiling with the lid off, and that's so that I can completely extract all the flavor out of the saffron. Well, it's coming up to a boil now. Now I'm gonna let it just boil here for a second while I go check and baste the chicken, and then I'll come back and put the lid on. Beautiful. So when I roast a chicken, I like to give it a couple minutes to let the fats rise to the surface and make the skin crispy. And adding the butter later like this makes it really amazingly crispy and oh so tender. All right, and now I'm going to put this back in the oven, and I'm going to reduce the temperature to 325 degrees. I'm going to roast it for about another 35 to 45 minutes. All right, and now it's time to come back over and put a lid on that rice. I'm going to give it a little taste before I go ahead and put a lid on it. Make sure I've got enough salt in there. Reduce that heat down to a nice low simmer. And now this is an excellent time to take a look at the chutney and see how it's coming along. It's coming along beautifully. You can see that the heat is starting to break down the mango, and as the mango breaks down, the sauce should thicken up quite nicely for you. I'll put a lid on that, let it keep simmering. All right, so you've got your chutney cooking, your rice cooking, and your chicken cooking. Everything's timed out about the same here, so you've got about 20 minutes to go take a little break. And now it's time to get down with some naan bread. See, these have puffed up a little bit. They've had a chance to rise. So now you get to squish them out. Squish them out nice and thin. Do a couple of them at a time. And I've got my griddle all preheated. It's sitting on top of a nice hot grill. And I'm just going to dress it up with just a little touch of butter. And then some nice little flatbreads on there. Gorgeous. Stretching them out as I place them on there to ensure maximum thinness. It's just going to be a few minutes on each side. You're going to see them puff up a little bit, brown up. Little flipsies there. Gorgeous. Squish them down a little bit to ensure contact with the griddle surface. You need just a second longer and get some more pressed out here. That's a great recipe for a big group of people as well. Just double or triple it. Your friends are going to be amazed. Now this sort of bread is very common to find in places like India and Afghanistan. It's used to scoop up saucy dishes like curries quite often. A little flip there, all right. See how this one's doing? Just about there. Now I'd recommend working on a somewhat smooth surface like this with no flour so that you can stretch these bad boys out as thin as possible. No rolling pins with this one, just use your fingers. Let's go back and take a look here. Ooh, that looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that one off. Get a couple more going here. Well, don't those look incredible? Can't wait to dig into those with my sweetie. Now let's pull the chicken out. Oh, I can smell the curry and the spices. That is a beautiful thing right there. So I'm gonna give the chicken one last final baste here while it rests. And then you're gonna wanna let it rest for about 10 minutes while you go ahead and get the spinach all done and the rice done as well. Close up the basket here so that your naan bread stays nice and warm and soft. And then it's time to wilt some spinach. So I've got a nice deep pan here. I'm gonna bring it up to a nice medium heat, and then I'm gonna brown some pearl onions in it and wilt the spinach. Just check the temperature of the pan here, make sure it's nice and warm. Adding some olive oil to it, and then in comes the pearl onions. It's going to take a few seconds here, but you'll start to hear them sizzling. And then look for them to just barely start to brown, and that's when you know it's the right time to add the spinach. All right, well, don't those look pretty? Now add several large handfuls of spinach here. 2 big fat ones, 4 small ones. Add it all at once. Begin tossing it in the olive oil. Kind of a gentle folding motion at first. Remember, the way that spinach cooks is that it cooks down substantially, so you start with a whole bunch and you end up with just a little bit. Another good trick to wilting spinach is to season it as you go, so that those flavors melt into the spinach. Salt and pepper here. And also a little grated nutmeg, because it's going to be cream spinach, and nutmeg plays really well off of cream. Go. Continue folding and tossing. Smells so good. This is a fantastic accompaniment to a spicy chicken dish like the chicken we're making tonight. Because of the cream, it helps to cool the fire that one might feel in their palate after taking a bite of the chicken. It's an excellent contrast in color, flavor, and texture. And right as the spinach reaches this point right here, add a little bit of heavy cream. And toss that in. Give it a little taste. Exquisite. Get it off the heat before it wilts all the way down. Let's plate this bad boy. Now, I usually like to start with the rice on a dish like this. That is what I'm gonna do. A little light fluffing helps to bring out the texture and flavor and beauty of this amazing rice. Look at that color. You just don't get that color from anything other than saffron, baby. Okay, nice little pile there. Nice little pile here. And then the chicken. Now, I find that we usually prefer the breast and wings. However, if you've cut up the chicken like I just showed you, you have your pick of pieces. And then the beautiful bright green spinach comes in next. Nice little pinch of that on each plate. Gorgeous. And a little bit of mango chutney on there. Being careful not to incorporate any cinnamon or allspice or bay leaf onto the plate. And the rest, just go ahead and put in a little dish off to the side so that you guys can enjoy it whenever you want. These babies are ready to go on the table. Just gonna grab both of these Also some fresh herbs to go on the side and a little bit of mango chutney to go along with it all. Excellent. Now, the great thing about the mango chutney is that if you don't happen to eat it all in one shot tonight, it's fine. It keeps very well in the fridge for several weeks and goes well with lots of different dishes. Well, look at that. You're a superstar chef. You just whipped up another fantastic dinner for your sweetie that you could find at a really good restaurant in any city. So enjoy this with a nice sweet white wine like a Riesling or a Gewürztraminer and call in your sweetie. Goodbye. Honey?
Hi. Smells good in here.
Well, hey.
Hey.
You're rolling on in tonight.
Uh-huh.
Hi.
Hi. Love you.
Oh, me too.
Wow, this looks wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've been cruising around. I've been making our romantic dinner. Watch out. She's a spicy one.
Nice chicken. What's in here?
Naan bread. Going in on it. Try it out.
That's delicious. This is such a hot kitchen.
So thanks for joining me in my hot kitchen tonight. Have fun turning up the heat in your kitchen, and I'll see you next week. Night-night.
You're too pure for this wicked world. Your data's uncorrupted, but does something skip inside you? That's what takes up time in your life. Add the song.
Pet the kitties.